תנבי ימנה בכל יעקב הגיבור לא אלא הבלתי ימולא גבורות ישראל אבי ימולא
Well, Shabbat Shalom. I feel like curling up around the fireplace now with my sweater as it's snowing outside. My blue sweater. My Junicorn sweater. I have my Hanukkah Junicorn sweater. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome. Bruchim Habaim. It is wonderful to have you with us this Kabbalat Shabbat, as we are going to welcome in Shabbat, and we are going to, as a heads up, we're going to discuss something a little heavy this evening, just as a heads up. But speaking of sitting around our fireplace with my mug of hot cocoa and the smell of pine in the air on my blue wreath and my blue lights on my house.
How about the wafting odor of cholent?
Wafting odor of cholent. If you have candles at home, this would be the time to light them with us. And as we begin Shabbat by saying our blessings over our candles.
Seasonal, I have to get a recipe for seasonal holiday cholent.
That sounds delicious with a little peppermint.
Pumpkin spice cholent with a peppermint garnish. Okay, well, we're going to start our Shabbat now, so we're going to bring in the Nefesh Yetera, that extra portion of soul, into our 25 hours of Shabbat, and this is obviously with a little bit of our music. We are anticipating the lighting of our Hanukkah candles later on this week. So we turn to page 120 in our Siddur prayer books, and we say the blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who sanctified us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the two lights of the Shabbat. And if you have a libation, if you have something celebratory to drink, you may hold it aloft. If you don't, you can hold a piece of challah up. By the way, Mishnah Berurah tells us that challah can substitute for kiddush as well, and a nice little glass of beer as well can work. But if you have anything that will represent the spirit of Shabbat, please stand. We'll raise it above our eyes on page 123. At the top of the page, we sing together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shabbat kodesho b'yavav ratzon hinechir lanu. Zikaron lema'aseh Bereshit Ki hu yom techiro Mikro kodesh Zecher letziot Mitzrayim Kivanu v'chorto v'otanu Kirashcha mikol holim V'shabbat kodshecha be'ava u'v'ratzon hinechaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Shabbat Shalom, L'chaim, David L'chaim, Art L'chaim, Alan L'chaim, Candy L'chaim, Rabbi Bellows, L'chaim to
L'chaim.
life, to life.
To life. Thank you. And if you were standing for the Kiddush, you may be seated. And one of the reasons why we at United Hebrew Congregation, one of the reasons why we split our yearly Torah reading cycle into 3 years, into a triennial reading cycle, is so that we can focus on 1/3 of each Torah portion. So if we took a whole year as opposed to 3 years, then we would have a much larger chunk of Torah each week, and we'd have a lot more that we could pick and choose from. And by focusing on only 1/3 each Shabbat, it makes it so that we can't avoid the really challenging and difficult parts of our sacred books. And this week, we read of Dinah, daughter of Jacob, the sister of the men who would become the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, the 12 tribes, you may know them most famously standing next to Donny Osmond in Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I think there was also a cartoon movie version of it. But the 12 tribes, the 12 tribes of Israel are named for all 12 of Jacob's sons, including Joseph. And there were once many thousands of living descendants who claimed each son as their progenitor, as their forefather. Yet, there was no tribe of Dinah. Her descendants were not counted, unfortunately, were not counted among the tribes of Israel. Now, practically, it makes sense, given the status of women in the time and place of this particular passage in our Torah. Women didn't inherit or pass on wealth, except for a few exceptions that do come up throughout our texts. But they don't inherit or pass on wealth or titles or houses. They were bound to a man's household. They are first daughter within their father's house until they become old enough to become the wife of in their husband's house. And God willing, one day they would have a son and be the elder mother within their son's house. That was the structure of the ancient Israelite society, and in fact, the structure of society in the ancient Near East writ large. And it's special in our texts for a female not only to be named, but to be involved in the narrative. There are many women who don't ever have a name. They're referred to as either a mother of someone, a wife of someone, a daughter of someone. Dinah is one of those special females in our Torah. We don't know exactly how many children Jacob had. There's a reference to his quote-unquote sons and daughters. And I think at one point we're given the number maybe 33. But we know definitely of his 12 sons, and we know of one of his daughters. Dinah plays a minor yet crucial part in this chapter of the book of Genesis. And that part is as contentious today as it's ever been. We read that Dinah went out to visit the daughters of the land. Now, there are many theories about what it means that she went to go visit the daughters of the land. We don't exactly know what that means. But the Hebrew there is clearly ominous. It uses the dreaded vatetse, and she went out. Ooh, there's a lot of vayetse, there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of and he went out. But when it says vatetse, it usually indicates a headache for the patriarchy at the time, an autonomous woman. Various feminist biblical scholars point out that a woman going out on her own in this ancient society was seen as destabilizing. It was no good for the balance of the patriarchal system at the time. In Dina's case, it's a bit nebulous whether things turned out well for her or not, especially because we don't really get to hear her side of the thing, her side of the story. Now, I want to announce a trigger warning right now. There is violence coming up that I'm going to be referring to, physical violence, and it may be too much for some listeners this Shabbat. And if you need to turn away and go do something else and come back, that's all right. When people hear of Dina, they usually think of her rape that takes place in this chapter. And oftentimes, in many Bibles and English translations, this section is subheaded the rape of Dinah. Yet there are those who question whether Dinah's experience was more consensual than traditionally thought. Now, in the actual Torah, we read that a prince named Shechem, or he's the prince of the kingdom of Shechem, it's a little ambiguous there, but the prince saw Dinah, and we're told he lay with her and he took her by force. And immediately following that, we read he loved her and tenderly spoke with her. Now, this contradiction alone doesn't indicate whether Dinah had in fact been raped or not. If anything, it's reminiscent of unhealthy, toxic relationships which descend to physical violence and domestic abuse. This encounter, though, has been imagined and reimagined by countless theologians, commentators, rabbis, authors, and leaders over the millennia. More recently, the author Anita Diamant wrote of Dinah in her book entitled The Red Tent. Many of you, I've heard, have read this book. If you have not read this book, I highly recommend it. This work of historical fiction focuses on the women in these chapters of Genesis. Specifically, Anita Diamant depicts the life of Jacob's wives, Rachel and Leah, and their handmaids, Bilhah and Zilpah, as well as Jacob's daughter, Dinah. Now, Diamant's description of Dinah's encounter with the prince is nuanced and reads as maybe more consensual than it seems to be within the Torah. In Diamant's book, Dinah is horrified when her brothers, Simeon and Levi, they slay the prince, and it's more implied in the book that they are in love with each other. They slay the prince and all the men of the town to avenge their sister's defilement. Now, in the Torah, we have no insight into Dinah's thoughts or feelings. We instead are told of her father Jacob's anger at the defilement of his daughter. Yet we don't have defilement really defined for us. And herein lies the greatest issue with this account in the Torah. We don't hear from Dinah. We don't know what Dinah considered the physical encounter with the prince to be. We don't know whether she perceived herself to have given consent. We don't know whether she had perceived herself to not have. We don't get to hear her voice in all of this. Not in the Torah, at least. And that's the point of Anita Diamant's novel, to give voice and to give more autonomy and more personality and humanness to the women in that time and place. Now, after Simeon and Levi slay all the men of the kingdom who wronged them, they take all the wealth, the women, and the children as their own. Thankfully, Jacob did not respond positively to that. Instead, he scolds his two sons and blames them for the problems politically he'll have to face. Do we hear Dinah's reaction to anything? Do we hear her reaction to the slaying of the men and capturing of the women and children? No. We hear one response by Simeon and Levi as to why they committed such atrocities. It's their reply to their father. They reply, "Should our sister be treated like a prostitute?" So in the end, Dinah fades away. Her story is unfortunately defined by her encounter with the Prince of Shechem. In some ways, she's kind of really just a pawn in the narrative. Again, this is the difficult stuff to work through. And my words this evening, what I've said this evening, only scratches the surface of the conversations that ought to be had. Dinah's name comes from the root for judgment. I hope and I pray that as biblical scholars and theologians continue to study these passages more and more, that more and more insight into Dinah's true feelings and thoughts will come forward, that we can hear her thoughts and place our own judgment on what happened based on what we think were her thoughts and feelings. I pray that when each of us reads these passages, we think about those in our texts who aren't given any voice. And I pray that that leads us to think about those in our own society, those today who don't have a voice, who aren't given a voice, and what we can do to ensure that their thoughts and their feelings are heard, are truly heard, that we listen. And to that, I say amen. We are going to work together to bring some joy into this world, and we're going to begin by turning in our prayer books. If you have a prayer book, or if you have the flip book, just a word about our prayer books, about our Sidurim, that they read from right to left, just as Hebrew reads from right to left, and that any page numbers we call out will be the higher page number or the blue bracketed page number. We're going to turn in our prayer books to page 138 with the words of Lecha Dodi as we rejoice, as we celebrate in beginning this Shabbat, and we welcome in Shabbat as if she were a bride. Lecha Dodi.
B'nei Shabbat nikabela, lecha dodi likra gala. B'nei Shabbat nikabela, shmon zachor v'dibur echad, ishbiat el ha'yuchad, Adonai echad. And you can face an entrance. Or open a window. Shabbat Kabbalah. Boi v'shalom ateret b'ala. Gam b'simcha uvetzola. Toch emunei am sekula. Boi chala, boi chala. Shabbat nikabela, lechato likatala. Ine Shabbat nikabela, lechato likatala. Ine Shabbat nikabela, lechato likatala. Shabbat nikabela.
We remain standing and we turn in our prayer books to page 146 for our call to worship, the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Page 149, just like there are moments of light and moments of darkness in the Torah, we thank God for our cycle of light and darkness. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand, uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change. And within it, we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim. Page 151. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Page 152, words of the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malechuto Leolam Va'ed.
You may be seated. We turn now to page 154 and we chant the words of the Ve'ahavta.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha bechol levavecha ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך וחיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך וברכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידך, וחיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני Elohechem, Emet.
On the top of page 157, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe that we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. And a long time ago, we joined hands and we marched together and we sang Mi Chamocha, who is like you, God, as we passed through the Red Sea, the Sea of Reeds. And we sing that together now.
Kamoka Baherim Adonai, Kamoka Netar Bakodesh, Kamoka Baherim Adonai, Kamoka Netar Bakodesh, Nora, Tekilo, Ose Fele, Kamoka Baherim Adonai, Kamoka Netar Bakodesh. Kamoga Baerim Adonai, Kamoga Netar Bakodesh Nora, Tekilo, Ose Fele Malemutecha, Rauvanecha, Ogeyayam, Libne Moshe Miriam. Markifata Adonai et Yaakov Ki alom yad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Kal Yisrael Ikamoka ba'erim Adonai Ikamoka netar Kamoga Baerim Adonai, Kamoga Ne'etar Bakodesh Nora, Tehilo, Ose Feler, Kamoga Baerim Adonai, Kamoga Ne'etar Bakodesh, Kamoga Baerim Adonai, Kamoga Ne'etar Bakodesh.
On page 160, we ask God to give us some light in those times of darkness, to give us those fireplaces around which we can listen to the radio. We ask that God watch over us as we sing Hashkivenu.
Hashivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'hamidenu Shomreinu Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'amidenu Shomreinu Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashivenu Adonai Eloheinu Shalom Ve'amidenu Shomreinu On page 163, at the top of that page, the alternative translation, Dan Nichols did such a beautiful, I'm going to cancel out my Elliot Capo here, trustee Capo, and we are going to sing together Eternity Utters a Day in the middle of that page. A thought has blown the marketplace away. There's a song on the wind and a joy in the trees. Shabbat has arrived in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night, and eternity utters a day. And eternity utters a day. Adonai, Svatai, Svatai Tika, Ufi, Yati Teila, Adonai, Svatai, Svatai Tika, Ufi, Yati Teila, place away. There's a song on the wind and a joy in the trees. Shabbat has arrived in the world, scattering a song in the silence of the night, and eternity utters a day. And eternity utters a day. Adonai, page 166. We remain standing for the Amidah, the standing prayers. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei avodeinu ve'imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Zara Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'konei Akol Ve'zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot Umevi Geula Livanei v'neihem Lema'an Shemo be'ahava Melech Ozer u'Moshiach Magen Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'ezrat Sarah, page 168. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai Mechayeh hakol atah Rav lehoshia Mashiva ruach u'morid hagashem Mechalkel chayim bechesed Mechayeh hakol berachamim rabim Zomech noflim v'rofech orim Umatir azurim Umekayem emunato Lishenei afar Michamocha ba'al gevurot Umido meroch Melech memit umechayeh Umatzmiach Yeshua V'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol Baruch atah Adonai Mechayeh hakol. The top of page 170. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh u'kadoshim b'chol yom yahallaluhu chasela. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el hakadosh.
You may be seated. On top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 175. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. And on page 176, we express our gratitude for this world.
V'chol hachayim yoducha selah, 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 selah. V'chol hachayim yoducha selah, 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 selah. V'hallelu v'simcha be'emet ha'el Yeshuateinu ve'ezrateinu. Selah, selah, selah. V'chol hachayim yoducha selah, 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 selah.
And hopefully, for those who struggle in this world, for those who sometimes struggle to find things in their life, for which to be grateful. We hope that those who struggle will find peace, will have peace, and we are part of that process. And so on page 178, we sing a song asking God to help us as we help to bring peace into this world. Words of Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav, HaYisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, HaYisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, HaYisrael Amcha, אתה מלך אדום לכל השלום כי אתה מלך אדום לכל השלום שלום רב הישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב הישראל עמך
Thoughts now turn to those who are in need of healing. Those who are in need of healing of mind, of body, or of spirit. If you have the name of somebody this Shabbat, somebody you're thinking of, I invite you in just a moment to either say the names of those people out loud or to say them silently in your hearts or in your minds. And you can even rise if that's your tradition to do so. So at this time, I invite you to share the name or names of those you're thinking of. Said and those names that we keep in our hearts and in our minds, we ask for a speedy recovery and a full recovery, a refuah shlema, as we join in together with the words of Mishaberach l'cholim, a blessing for those in need of healing.
bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, of body, of spirit, and let us say
Baruch atah Adonai Rafeh HaCholim. Blessed you, God who heals the sick, and together we say, Amen. We now take a moment for some silent prayer and reflection.
Shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. Shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael Al kol Yisrael ve'yineru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'inu amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael ve'inu amen. Shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. Oseh shalom bimromav uyaseh shalom aleinu. yaseh shalom aleinu. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu.
This Shabbat, we have a few announcements. On Sunday, December 13th at 4:30 p.m., please join us on Zoom for United Hebrew Congregation's 2020 annual meeting and election of officers and board of trustees. And we will also be celebrating Mike Euchman, who unfortunately I don't get to see as often as I used to. But he is the recipient of the Irene Fox Ruach Award, and we're very grateful to Mike and all that he does and has done for us. And we're coming up to Hanukkah, which is why I've mentioned my Junicorn sweater, I've mentioned a fireplace, and so for each night of Hanukkah, please join us at 6 p.m., That's via Facebook, via live stream, on our website, via YouTube, as we light candles as a community. Please note that on Shabbat, on Friday, December 11th, we'll light the candles as part of Hanukkah Shabbat at 6:30 p.m. And Saturday evening, we'll also be doing it.
Yes, we're talking about actually doing it us as a UH family live outside. Nobody here, just us, will be outside live as a UH family celebrating and lighting the candles.
So many opportunities for us to come together as a community, to feel as one community during Hanukkah. And this Shabbat, by the way, the gift shop is not open. I've walked over there. There's no iris to be seen. And however, our gift shop has all of your Hanukkah needs. So please, if you'd like to take a look at what we have, you can call the office. Or if you know Iris's number, which I don't have it offhand, but you can make an appointment and see what we have. As for this Shabbat, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. will be Torah study. You can find the link for that on our website. 10:30 a.m. will be our Shabbat morning service will be live streamed. And then 7:30 p.m.
I think it's 6:30 for next week now.
6:30. We've changed. Look at this. I'm throwing this at you all at once. I'm sorry.
A curveball.
But we've changed to 6:30. 6:30 p.m. for next week now. And then Sunday evening at 8 p.m., that's not changing, on Facebook Live is our final Jewy or Fiction semifinals episode. Okay, we've narrowed it down, and it's going to be two of our congregants, Jethro Adams and Dylan Pines, are going head-to-head to see if they know Jewish trivia. So please tune into that, 8 p.m. Sunday evening. And with that, we are going to give blessings to those of us, I don't know if there are people in the room, who have birthdays in the month of December, whether you are a child or an adult.
Or a rabbi.
Or a rabbi that's not here purposely, and that's why I'm here. So that this rabbi can enjoy her birthday, even though she was still here working, doing a little bit of work. But if you or somebody you know that's with you has a birthday in December, you can even stand up right now, and I'm going to offer you a little bit of an English blessing. Maybe the cantor can offer a little bit of a priestly blessing to you, and I'm going to offer you this blessing right now. Blessed is the source that dreamed the day of your presence here on earth. May you feel embraced and folded anew by the miracle of your being. May you feel the deep purpose of your soul, loved and cherished into becoming who you are meant to be. May the inevitable dark gifts of hurt and loss school you in strength and perseverance. May you find holiness when you look into the eyes of someone who loves you. May you be a source of holiness for others. May you be a treasure and develop your uniqueness and be a blessing to all you meet. Amen.
And now we recite the threefold priestly benediction. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. May God's countenance shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God walk with you and give you, may Aviasrim, 120 years of health and peace. We say together, Amen. And
Amen.
before we go on with the Olenu, we have one more need in our congregation, and that is we have a couple slots open for our streaming group. So those of you who want to be part of our group of streamers, not Twitch-type streamers, that's a little bit different,
What
although
about
maybe
streamers I throw?
that's
and
New Year's
decorate?
Eve. That's
Not those.
yeah, no. We're talking about you see all this wonderful stuff going on. If you want to be a part of that and make that happen in a safe environment, we keep no more than a couple of people in the sanctuary, and everybody else is masked and really far away from us. You're more than welcome to reach out to the congregation. Art Zeman and Candy Zeman are our directors, and if we forward their names to you, they will speak with you as well. So we would love to have you on board to help us reach to our community as much as we can.
And with that, we are ready to begin concluding our service. For that, we turn back into our Sidurim, into our prayer books, and we turn to the bottom of page 586, and we rise, if you are able to, for Aleinu L'Shabeach.
Aleinu L'Shabeach L'Adon HaKol, L'Tet Gedula L'Yotzer Bereshit, Shelo Asanu Kigoyei Haratzot, Velo Samanu Kemishbechot HaAdama, Shelo Samech Chelekenu Kahem, Vigor Aleinu Kechol Amonam, Va'anachanu Korei, Umishkachavim, Umodim, Lifnei Melech Mochi Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch. Page 591. V'nemar v'chaya Adonai lemelech ala kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo
You may be seated. Ish kochavim she'oram magia arza rak asher hem atzmam avdu ve'enam. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the stars, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways that we remember. This Shabbat, our congregation's heartfelt condolences go out to the families of Minnie Cohen, Ronnie F. Gerstein, Eileen Horowitz, Alan Kaufman, Joan J. Joni Sachs. And we're in the period of Shloshim this Shabbat for Robert Bob Boxerman, Jerry Brash, Lillian Kolbersch, Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. And this Shabbat we recall the yahrzeits and we lovingly remember Irene Bernstein, Sue Falk Birnbaum, Dorothy Catlin, Morris J. Cohen, Fanny Cohen, David Mark Colgrove, Faith Ellis, Gary Fagan, Sadie Z. Feldman, Tilly Fleischman, Abe J. Furfine, Janet Gittleman, Naomi S. Goffstein, Harry Goldstein, Lillian Stein Green, Dina Gardner Grossberg, Jules Hoffman, Pearl Hookerman, Dr. Alex E. Horwitz, Esther Hubert, Nathan Hyatt, Teresa Morale Hyman, Burton Iskowich, Marilyn Katz, Nathan Kornblum, Phil C. Kretschmar, Pauline G. Cutton, Meyer Y. Levin, Jules P. Levy, Bess Gitlin Levy, Archie Lewis, Molly Marcus, Charles Margolis, Renee C. Mayer, Harry D. Miller, Myrtle Orenstein, Simon Packman, Arthur Pepperner, Edwin C. Paul, Dr. Louis Plax, Max L. Podolsky, Florence Portney, Edward Quicksilver, Linda Joy Rector, Donald K. Ross, Joseph Rossen, David Rudolph, Mary Schwartz, Abraham Serby, Simon Jack Shanker, Ida Siegel, Harry Sigaloff, William S. Silverman, Morton H. Saul, Harold L. Solomon, Marvin A. Stein, Martha Suskind, Hessie Tamarkin, Esther Sakowski Tanzer, Jeanette Tessler, Maurice H. Tessler, DDS, Elaine Towerman, Betty S. Tovis, Blanche Meyer Turner, Bernard Weisberg, Hyman C. Weissman, Barney Whitus, Betty J. Wolf, Deborah A. Wolkowitz, Robert E. Yader. Zichronam livracha. May their memories forever be a blessing. As we now turn in our Sidurim to page 598, and if you're able to, invite you to please rise as we join in as one community for the words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ba'alma divrach hirotei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei almayah, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal shemei d'kudesha barichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens above send peace down here to us, to all of Israel and to all the world, as together we say, amen. Now, earlier in the service, I spoke about something pretty heavy, pretty dark. And we're in this time of the year where there's a lot of darkness. And there's a lot of actual darkness outside. That's why we have a festival of lights. We have Hanukkah. And we're grateful that we have these opportunities to come together, to snuggle up around the fireplace, if you have a fireplace or an electrically lit candle or something like that. But to be together, and we thank God for the fact that we're still here. And we say, not by might, not by power, but by Spirit alone, will we all live in peace. We say, we express our gratitude to God that we are here, and we pray for peace.
On page 669, taken from the book of Zechariah, chapter 4, verse 6. We sing this together. Ready? And...
Power.
My spirit alone.
Ruach.
Shall we all live in peace? Not by might and not by power.
Power.
My spirit alone.
Ruach.
Shall we all live in peace? The children sing, the children dream, and their tears they fall and they fall, and another song will rise, another song will rise, not by might and not by power.
Power.
My spirit alone.
Ruach.
Shall we all live in peace? Not by might and not by
Power.
thy spirit alone.
Ruach.
Shall we all live in peace?
Not by might.
Not by might, not by power. Shalom.
Wishing you warmth and light this Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.